Well, welcome to Relationships, a 4-part series on relationships. We're talking with real people, real conversations, whatever aspect of relationships you're in, whether you're single, married, dating, or it's complicated, there's something for you.
Look, we live in a society that is overwhelmed with different messages about relationships, love, lust, and so we want to define what healthy relationships are. And to help us do that, we have two incredible guests with us.
Love experts.
You may know them, Pastor Josh, Pastor Sjhana, our incredible lead pastors here in Australia. You know them, you love them, they've got a whole bunch of wisdom to share. Josh, Sjhana, tell us.
Yes.
How are you today?
Good.
We're
ready
great.
to speak on relationships. This is our favourite topic to talk on, I reckon.
It's Josh's favourite.
It's my topic. It's my favourite, and Sian's comes along for the ride. But all the wisdom comes from her, and the naughtiness from me.
Fun, fun, fun. Well, tell us, how long have you guys been married for?
Yeah, I know the answer to this. So we've been married for 15 years.
Yes.
And we have two beautiful boys, Jackson, who's 10, and Jordan, who's 7.
Yeah. And we dated and engaged for 2 years, so maybe about 17 years we've been in each other's lives in a relationship.
Wow.
And before that we were friends.
Very good. Hey, we're going to play a little game that I like to call rapid fire.
Ooh.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you guys 4 questions, and I want you to answer them with those little paddle pop sticks that you have in front of you, right? Why don't you show them to the cameras right now?
Hold yours, right?
We got face of everyone there. All right. So I'm going to ask you guys 4 questions, and I want you guys to answer it with whatever side of the paddle pop stick, right? And no hesitation, just go for it.
I feel like this is going to be the answer.
Okay, all right, let's find out. So, question number 1. Who is more likely to ignore the phone when their mum calls?
Sjhana, not what I was expecting.
Well, I would have thought of Sjhana straight away.
I'm always busy when they call.
Question 2. Who is more likely to forget an anniversary? Oh, wow. 2 for Sjhana already.
Wow.
2-0. Question number 3. Who is more likely to remain calm in a crisis? Oh, okay. There it is. Question 4, final question. Who is more likely to get away with murder?
Oh. Even if I did it, they wouldn't believe. I would be arrested. I wouldn't even go to court. So they're like, no way.
You'd think, Josh, you might be able to talk your way out of it, but no one would believe that Sjhana would ever murder anyone.
It wasn't me. Well, she's got blood on her hand.
That's how that would go down for sure.
Definitely.
Well, look, before we get into the real meat of today's conversation, I'd love to know, because there's a lot of controversy about this question, how did you two actually get together? I've heard conflicting stories.
Sarah, I'm so glad you asked. I will tell the truth.
It's a long story, so do it quick.
I'll do it quick. My brother used to be interested in Sjhana at school. In fact, they went to the formal together. Now, he's pretty convinced Sjhana was interested. Sjhana said she wasn't interested. I'm going to let the crowd decide today. Either way, nothing happened and time went on. And this little filly fell in love with this stud. And we were friends, hanging out. We were playing basketball one time, and I let you win, just a gentleman. And we went inside, and Sjhana said, so where are we at? I'm kind of interested in you. And I could tell because of all the staring. At which I was like, we're friends? And she's like, well, I'm kind of interested. Is something going to happen? I'm like, no, I just got a job. I just got out of university. I just wanted to live my life and all that sort of stuff. So a year went by filled with bitterness and anger from Sjhana's family, her friends, her cousins, her sisters, all that sort of stuff towards me. And then eventually we went to a gig together. We're still friends, or I thought, and we played pool, and my friend started doing a little bit of flirting with Sjhana, and my competitive side came up, and I thought, no, I'm interested in her. And basically, it's your everyday Disney story. We got together, and here we are.
So you guys wouldn't be here together today if your friend hadn't hit on Sjhana.
Correct.
Basically, that's what we're saying.
Thank you, Team Ashdown. Thank you.
But also,
Yes.
so we did play basketball against each other. And I did legitimately win because I actually did play basketball.
Yeah, you were a good basketballer.
The other thing that wasn't true, your brother and I went as friends. We were never ever dating.
Yeah, friends like yours. You didn't really. They didn't kiss. They didn't kiss. They didn't kiss.
Goodness me.
All right, yeah, go on.
The other bit. Oh, so I asked him after we played basketball. I really liked him. I thought, you know what, this is a guy I could hang out with. I'd beat him. And so I said,
Emphasis
my
on the
exact
beat, right?
You heard that?
Yeah.
I said, these are my exact words, which I don't know what you were talking about before, but I said, I really like hanging out with you and I'd like to do it more. That's what I said. And you said, I'm yeah, no, we're going to wait till my brother gets a girlfriend and blah, blah. So we waited a whole year. And then the pool thing happened.
Yep. And now we're happy.
There's hope for anyone.
That's awesome.
Oh, that is brilliant.
What did you heard?
Yeah, basically something somewhere in the middle.
Mostly my lies.
Yeah.
Great.
So let me get this right. So you stole the girl that your brother was interested in.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. That's how it is?
Yeah. And I'm hoping
And
that
you lost at a basketball match as well.
It wasn't a good start. But it's ending well. Me and my brother now talk occasionally once a year.
Oh, my goodness.
He's cool with it. He's cool.
So I've got a question for you guys.
Yeah.
So in this relationships, we're going to be talking to everyone, whether they're single, dating, or married.
Right.
What is some foundational pieces that you can give to people at whatever stage they're at?
Yeah. Here you go.
Well, I think what's really important to recognise when you're talking about relationships is that they are actually God's idea. He created Adam, and he said it wasn't good for him to be alone, so he created Eve, a helper, a helpmate. And so I think when we come to think about relationships, we think it's all about me, but it's God's idea.
That's so good.
I think when you're talking about relationships, it's important to go there first. Okay, if he created it, then he knows how they work best.
That's awesome. One of the great things you look in that story is that Adam knew who he was.
Yes.
God had given him identity. God had given him everything he needed. God had given him a job. And can I say, girls, look for a guy that's got a job. And then last came the mate. There was and I think it's important to know who we are before we go in a relationship. So many people go looking for a relationship to discover who they are or to find value. But in the garden, he knew who he was. Yep. He knew who his provider was. He had those things worked out. He had a purpose in life. And then he had the mission, and then he had the mate. I just think if we know who we are, it's the best foundation we could have. You've got to know God loves me before a relationship. Have friendships before the relationship. Find value in the word and in serving others and church before all that. And you can have joy as a foundation. If you're looking for someone to make you have more joy and have purpose, they won't be able to fulfill that. That's not their job. That's unfair that I would expect Sjhana to be the one that makes me have joy or makes me have purpose. I've got to have that first, and then she adds to my joy and she helps me fulfill my purpose, and I help her fulfill her purpose. But if those things aren't worked out first, there's no foundation to build on.
Totally. If you don't know who you are, as you come into a relationship, you're going to want that person to meet all your needs. So foundationally, you got to know who you are in Christ.
Yeah.
If you know that person adds to your life and complements your life rather than becomes your all. Because if Josh became my all, he would have let me down 100 million times.
Yeah.
But he adds so much to my life, and God's brought us together. But we knew who we were first. We knew our identity.
True.
Yeah, so healthy.
You're welcome.
Look, what are some of the practices and habits that have really helped you in your relationship?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, to be honest, let's start here and then we'll go to some other things. We both had a strong walk with God before we went out.
Yep.
And that's continued throughout. So we were neither dependent on each other for our walking with God. We actually grew up in different churches, and I'm not saying that's the way, but we didn't grow up serving God together. We just both served God. We both had our own devotional life. We had our own Christian friendship circles, and we didn't drop all that to come together. They all came with us in our relationship. So we weren't with each other to try and find those things, and we didn't lose those things when we got with each other. That was a real foundational thing. What else?
I think having the right people around you, family has been so important. They've spoken a lot into our life. And so having the right people, godly people who speak wisdom into your life has been very helpful for us.
That's been huge.
We did marriage counselling before we got married, and that was amazing. And I think that helped me heaps because I was able to kind of recognise, okay, one thing that we went through was love is a choice and it's a commitment. So one day I might not feel like I'm in love, but I remember it's actually a choice I get to make every day to love Josh.
Totally.
And what a privilege.
Yes. You're welcome.
But it's a choice and it's a commitment. And so I think that helped us so much foundationally, working through things and coming from different families, you bring different values. So marriage counselling definitely helped us.
Totally.
Our family helped us.
Not being codependent on each other, such a big thing. Again, we all know people that start going out with each other and they get so dependent on each other. We say this, and you've heard, some people have heard this, you're not meant to complete each other. Only God can do that.
Yeah.
So if you're complete in God, then you complement one another. But too many people try to complete each other, and they either fail or they become codependent on each other, and that's unfair. So we brought our friendships with us, and we still kept them. And we, to this day, we have our mutual friends, and we have friends that we separately go out and see and spend time with. We have our passions we do together, and our different passions. Like, we don't go to the same gym. Yeah, we do different things. We go out to, we have different styles in food, yet we've got similar ones. We've got different things we allow each other to have, because it actually allows us to keep complementing each other. It's like salt and pepper's not the same, but they go together really well. Salt and pepper's
That's
here.
really good.
The last thing I'd say is, as Christians, we're called to, lay down our lives for each other. And I think sometimes we confuse relationships thinking that's the whole point of, your life is finding somebody and then they complete you and but it's actually when you go into a relationship with somebody or marry somebody, you are deciding that you're going to give up your life.
Yes.
And deny yourself. And Judah Chia says it so well.
Yes.
You go home to die.
Sounds so strong.
Actually, you go home to give up your life. And so going into a relationship, realizing actually this isn't about just getting my needs met, but I'm actually committing myself to die to this person is actually, if that's what you're willing to do, then get into a relationship.
That's so good.
Wow.
Can I give one more?
Yeah.
Have goals together.
Yeah, great.
Sjhana and I always, from when we were dating, or once we realised, we were going to be married, we started setting goals. And now we could tell you where we're going for our 20th anniversary, our 25th anniversary as far as holidays, because that's a goal for us. We've planned out where we think our next house might be. We've planned out small goals. We've planned eating goals or fitness goals, ministry goals. Even as goals, when we ever go away, we go, all right, who's some people we just want to invest in and hang out with more than when we go home? We're just constantly thinking, all right, what are things we're working together with? That one allows for conversation, because as you get married, you're actually looking for things to talk about sometimes, and you're going, okay, let's talk about how we're going to get there. It gives you something to strive towards. It also allows you to give the permission for each other to work on each other's improvements and being better, because we're both going towards the same place. Sometimes one of us is running in one direction and the other's wondering, why are you driving me, or why are you staying back? But when we walk together towards a goal, it allows iron to sharpen iron. It gives you something to dream about and be excited about and talk about too. So I think goals have been a big thing for us.
Yeah,
I
that's
love
fantastic.
that. Such practical advice.
Yes.
Well, look, something that we wanted to ask you is we do get a lot of messages in society about what a healthy relationship looks like, how to get in a relationship, and I think some of those messages are very different from what we see as a healthy Christian perspective or biblical point of view.
Yeah.
How do you see those differences?
Yeah, okay. Well, let's look over the world right now. The world, everything's about you. Everything's about me. So everything's selfish. And we don't say it that way. It's a real bad marketing word, but it's reality. The whole world points you to be selfish. But the whole Bible is selfless and servanthood, laying down your life. And the reality is you watch most relationship movies, dating series, whatever's on Netflix or whatever you watch. Everything's about that person's feelings, emotions, desires, instant gratification rather than another person. And everything about Jesus was about others, from all of his ministry to his teachings to ultimately his death and resurrection and his mission to us. But then we think it's different in the most important relationship we're going to have outside of Jesus. So it's like, you can't do a relationship if it's about you. It has to be about the other person. And that's the beginning point. So let's go off there, wherever you want to go.
Yeah, totally. I always say, there are two kingdoms you serve. You either serve the kingdom of self, which is, anything that meets and gratifies my own need, or the kingdom of God. And you have to kind of make a choice which one you're going to choose to lay your life down for. Yeah, we do it for one kingdom or the other, and that's just kind of summary. But I think also a worldly understanding of love is so different from the biblical understanding of love. And love in the world is about you meet my need and I'll get what I need, but it's that's not biblical love. Biblical love is agape love, which is what you were saying, laying down your life. It's sacrificial, and it's the most fulfilling, enriching thing, because that's how God's actually designed us. So I think the world's perspective on love is so different from the biblical.
You often say, talking to this, relationship's not 50-50.
Yeah. Yep.
Talking to that.
Oh, yes. So sometimes we go into relationships, it's transactional. If you give me a gift, I'll give you a gift. Or if you do the dishes today, I'll do the dishes tomorrow. It becomes so transactional.
Yes.
But that's worldly culture, worldly thinking. But godly culture, godly thinking is actually, I'll give you 100% and you give me 100%.
Wow.
But we actually give each other everything. And you reap in benefit of that.
That's amazing.
Another one, let's just talk the obvious one. Let's talk about sex. Because the truth is, here we go. All of it was a lead up to chat about sex. Because so much of what we see in our world when it comes to relationship will ultimately end in sex. And most people that are thinking about relationship are wanting comfort and are wanting someone to talk to, but sex is a huge part of it. And we don't have to pretend that's not a huge part of it, because God made it central to a healthy marriage.
Yeah.
And if we look at sex, especially when we look in movies, TV shows, whatever you read online, etc., it's all about raw passion. It's all about what do I get and what do I feel? And we're not actually thinking about tomorrow, because I'm not thinking about that person. I'm just thinking about me. And it's an unrealistic view of sex. It's an unhealthy view of sex. And I think this actually affects so many relationships before people get married, because sex finds a way to be able to creep in, and something that was meant to be for marriage happens early, or in marriage it gets distorted because we've got this Netflix view of sex rather than God's view of sex. And I think a good illustration is you might watch MasterChef, and you may love the meals in MasterChef, and you might want to eat the meals in MasterChef, and maybe you might be able to cook a meal or two for MasterChef, but not every meal is a MasterChef meal. And it would be a total misunderstanding to think every night you're going to have a MasterChef dinner. I love talking about this more than Saturday, right?
Great analogy.
But sometimes you have baked beans. Sometimes it's just meat and 3 veg. And
sometimes it's 2-minute noodles.
And sometimes it's a 2-minute noodles. But sometimes it's like one of those MasterChef Croquembouche.
Wow, impressive.
I love it. Maybe and it's the same with sex. Sometimes it's a 2-minute noodles. Sometimes it's a Croquembouche.
Edit that.
No, it's fine. It's great.
I love
it's real.
it.
The reality is that we put so much pressure on each other in dating and in marriage for sex to be like Netflix, rather than what God created it to be, which is actually way more satisfying, which is actually way more about the long term, which is about us having a great physical relationship, as well as emotional and spiritual and all those things that we want. But when we're 80, as well as when we're in our 20s and now in our 30s, and when you're tired and the kids
40s.
And 40s as we're creeping into. But I just think sex is so much of the world's focus, so we take that on. So we've got to be aware God had a plan. God created sex. God created sex to be glue. He actually made it so that when we would go through the tough times or the tired times, or when kids come, that it's still our glue. God made it that sex was a spiritual thing. It actually is the greatest picture of the Trinity and what they experience and what they feel, and their unity would come from this experience you have when you have sex. Sex is actually worship, and never let sex come into the worship time in church, but this is actually a form of worship, because we are actually thanking God for the person that He gave us and honoring that person. When we see sex through God's lens, we see it as an act of worship, which means there's God's presence and His benefits all the way through it. And I just want to stop there for a moment when we talk on this stuff, because it has to be biblical, it has to be selfless, but it actually is the sealing of a covenant.
Absolutely. And I think sex is a gift as well. It's a gift for the person you marry, or the person, it's designed to keep a couple together and married. That's what God designed it for us, so that we would be able to stay together. It's a bonding agent. So when it's not done in the right way, that's why it hurts so much when you pull it apart, because you're ripping apart what God designed to keep a married couple together.
It's like if you were to glue two materials together and you were to pull them apart, and often quite quickly, what is attached to each other comes with each other. So you end up taking a part of, if Sjhana and I were to sleep together before marriage and then break apart, and I can say, if that's been your story, God has grace and God can heal and restore, but part of that renewal is saying, I need to do things differently next time. And I believe as a church, we can help you. I believe there's counselors that can walk with you. I believe God's grace is enough to heal and restore you. While we can never get back what we gave away, He can give us back a sense of peace and wholeness and healing, but we've got to choose to do it God's way from this point forward.
And that's actually something we're going to talk about in one of the episodes later down the track and give some real practical tips and advice for if you are in that situation currently and you want to make a change or you want healing, what we can do, because it's such a real and important conversation.
It is. Can I give one more about world versus covenant? World versus kingdom, it's covenant. The covenant we make to each other, and that is a covenant in Jesus, is what gives us purpose and hope. The world's view says if you get the right house, then you'll be doing well as a married couple. If you have the right physicality, then you're doing well as a couple. If you have perfect kids, then you're doing well as a couple. If you're going on holidays and adventures, and if you're Insta-worthy and all those perfect pictures that everyone sets up, life's perfect. The covenant we're making with each other is the foundation we're building on with Jesus, not the season we're in. So I've talked to people that's had kids with a disability, and that doesn't mean they're not doing as well as a family. They actually are now just more dependent on the presence and grace and covenant of God that's in their relationship than perfect kids. And we've had times where we couldn't afford to go on a holiday. And that didn't make us less of a couple. We were not doing a relationship based on holidays. It was based on us with Christ in the centre. Homes that have worked out, homes that haven't worked out. We've stayed in some of the best places and the worst places. But that's not what makes us happy or successful as a couple. It's this covenant.
Yeah, and I think it's a great word because I think the world looks at relationships like, if I'm bored or you're not meeting my need anymore or I don't find you attractive anymore, then just move on. Like, get a new house, get a new car, get a new relationship.
That's true.
It's just, if you're not happy or you're not feeling it anymore, just trade it in for another, right? That's the worldly mentality about relationships. But the godly mentality is a covenant commitment, if you choose to get married, that you're committing to be with this person for better or worse. And God made covenant commitments with people all through history.
Yes.
And when He made the new covenant, which was in Jesus' blood, just before He went to the cross, the last thing He did was get on His knees and wash His disciples' feet. And that was the covenant He was displaying. Hey, God is a God of love, and that is the God who we serve. And so this is how you're meant to live your life. And so I think love is seen so differently in the world than how the Bible says love. Love is actually giving up your life, dying, like you said. Like, it's so denying yourself, and that's the covenant commitment.
That's
okay,
right.
I'm in this, and I'm laying my life down, and honestly, that's where the blessing and the covering comes.
So can I just jump on that for a second?
Yeah.
So then if you're dating, when you start dating, you don't know that you want to be with this person forever. So some people are like, you've got to know if you're going to go for a coffee, you're going to marry them and be in this covenant. There's no way you can know that. And we didn't know that for quite a bit into our relationship.
In fact, our first date, Josh took me out for dinner, and he had a sheet of questions to ask me, like literally written down.
That's right.
What are you doing?
He's legitimately.
I've never been. He has nothing to talk to me about.
Don't do it.
So not in the middle of a date.
Don't do it. I made that mistake.
Do you play Xbox?
It wasn't even on his phone. It was written down.
It was like a post-it note. It was a post-it note. But here's the deal, right? I was trying to work out who this girl was, because if I'm going to go out with you, I have to have an intent of wanting to get to that point. Now, not every relationship will. And you don't date to just experiment, but you're going with the intent and heart. You ask them out if you think this is someone I can be with, but you won't know that for a while. But don't get married until you know you can make that covenant. Yeah. And sometimes people put so much pressure on us to go, you've been dating for 6 months, you've been dating for a year, you've been dating for a year and a half, get married. And there does come a point where you've got to make a decision. But we often feel, I've just got to take the next step.
Yeah, totally.
No, are you ready to make a covenant to that person? And if you start dating and you realise, no, I can't, it'd be better to finish that early with wisdom and care and guidance so you don't hurt the other person. But that's why sex doesn't come into a relationship before that covenant, because I may give you a part of me that I'm actually not willing to commit to. And that's why go slow, be willing to have a coffee, guys. Get to know one another, but find out, am I committed to making that covenant?
Right.
Ask yourself, is this a person that I want to spend my life fighting with? Because you're going to have to work through fights and conflict. Is this a person that I want to do that with? Because it's not get married because no, is this someone that I want to work through all those things with? Okay, then great, marry them.
And if they look like this, we're willing to fight because it's going to work out well. That's a great point.
I love what you guys are saying because it kind of like ties into the foundational things that you were saying just previously. You know, like some people are so willing to jump the gun and go to the next step rather than you can find your joy on your own first. Where you're single, I just need to take the next step and I'll find joy when I get dating. Yeah. You know, we're going to find joy and it's going to be better when we get married or whatever it is. They're always trying to jump the gun.
Totally.
So many do. So many do. It's this tension. Some people are so scared to go into a relationship and maybe there's been hurts or rejection in the past and that's difficult. However, we've got to trust in God's grace and healing. So you've got to be willing to take a step. Being in a relationship is bold, is scary, and is selfless. So at some point, you've got to be willing to do the selfless thing and be willing to go and talk to someone. However, once you're in, it's almost like then you've got to just go slow and slow enough that you can be sure because life goes fast. Like we have been married 15 years, we've been dating for 2, there was that weird year between and we were friends for about 5. The truth is we've been in each other's lives for maybe 22 years or more and it goes this fast. And life will happen fast, so don't rush those early stages, but be willing to say, hey, is there anything going on here after a basketball game?
After you lose at a basketball game.
Thank you, Gillian. Thank you.
All right, well, it's always time for us to come to a close, but I want to know, we're going to do a speed round. What are 5 quick tips for good communication in a relationship?
Okay, first one, when. You've got to work out when to communicate. I will, if we have a disagreement or something we're trying to work out, I will want to talk now. Shans will want to talk never, and we've got to find out the right time. Don't try to solve anything instantly, but also don't put it off for eternity. Find the right moment and talk.
Conflict avoider, conflict addresser. Say sorry, learn to apologise. That's the hardest thing to do in a relationship, I think, because pride comes in and you're like, no, I'm right, they're wrong.
Yep.
But sometimes the best thing you can do when you're communicating is apologise for your part in it.
Yep.
And that actually leads to a road of finding a place of agreement or working things through.
Unity is more desired than being right or wrong. Avoid the I feel stuff. And you can, I feel, you always, you never, whatever. They're the things you're feeling and you've got to be able to express your feelings. That's something I'm working at, expressing my feelings. That's okay, but it's putting them on the other person like you never, you always, you. It's unfair because no one's that bad. It's just finding ways to express. What else?
Totally.
Deliberating compliments. I say that's a really important one in communication. Sometimes we think things that we don't say and the other person doesn't feel appreciated, but you've actually got to tell them they've done well and not just assume they should just know what to do or of course that's their role in the relationship. Like, be intentional in saying, well, I appreciate you. Even that small thing I noticed. A cup of coffee is not just assumed, a cup of coffee is appreciated. And if you do that forever, it just helps everything to be nicer and smoother. And
I think sometimes in relationships you have conversations in your head that you haven't had with the person. Yep. So I can get angry at Josh. He doesn't, but I've had the conversation in my head, not with him.
Yes, I do that.
So,
yeah, I'm with you.
So like, I'm angry that you don't know that I have these things to do, but I've not talked to him. So I think actually verbalising things that are in our mind sometimes is really, really important because then he comes home, he's like, well, have I done something wrong? No, yes, but I've talked about it in my head.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a big one.
That's a good one. And last, I'll give one more. Avoid dumb jokes. Sometimes you just say, and the longer the relationship goes on, you get more comfortable. You say dumb things that you think are funny, sarcastic things that are actually hurtful, side comments that don't matter. Yeah.
Oh,
and she's wonderful, Elizabeth, if you're watching. But don't do the dumb things, do the deliberate things.
Yeah, it's great.
Cool.
Right, awesome. Hey, next week we are talking about people being single, and we've got Pastor Seth on the show, and we've got Larissa Jones as well.
Oh, great people.
I want to ask you guys, what's one piece of advice, maybe Josh, if you can approach it from the guy's perspective, and Sjhana, if you can approach it from the girl's perspective, one piece of advice that you'd say to single men, Josh?
Okay. Be disciplined before the relationship. So be disciplined in finance before. be disciplined physically before, be fit, be disciplined spiritually before. If those disciplines are in your life, you'll be able to be disciplined in the relationship, and it will set things up. And I know you said one more. Ask her out.
Great.
Like, you just got to. Sometimes we're just like, there's life after coffee and there's life after no, and it's only coffee. And if you have to do that out of a relationship or out of some level of conversation, and ask him out. But I'm talking to the boys. Boys, take the lead and ask her out, because there's life after no. There will be.
It's great.
So good.
I think for girls, invest in your friendships, because before Josh and I even were dating, I think I was a bridesmaid 9 times. I have 9 bridesmaid dresses available for anyone to use. Probably very outdated now. But I really chose to invest in my friends, and when they got married, I would celebrate them. I would throw their parties. I would put on their bridal showers, and I didn't even have a boyfriend then. So I chose to really invest in my friends and serve God. I just kept committed to my church, and even until we were married, I didn't move churches. So I just stayed committed to God, committed to serving and loving people.
And those friends are still your friends to this day. That's what's cool.
Yeah. Amazing.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Josh and Sjhana. That was just outstanding, and I'm sure helpful for anyone watching, no matter what stage or age you are, what relationship you're in. We want to encourage you to join us for next week. We have episode 2, Smashing the Stereotypes of Being Single. We can't wait to see you there, 7:30 p.m. on YouTube. See ya.
Loved it. Gonna go have some 2-minute noodles.